So we got here Dr. Thornton Streeter. What's up? Welcome.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you very much. Welcome to my home in
Oh, I
Colorado.
love it. I love it. Beautiful.
Yeah, I
Beautiful.
mean, I've got this thing about stitched art,
Nice.
art that's
That's
created by
beautiful.
fabulous grandmothers over long
Yeah.
winters. Every single
Yeah, my
mood.
mom does some of that. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Well, there's so much love in every stitch. People don't
Mhm.
realize that.
Yeah, definitely. For
And
sure.
and it's a good analogy for our reality, of course, because you know most of us see reality as a very material thing without realizing that the waft and weave of our reality is sound and light.
Mm.
Two very material aspects of our reality. So, yeah, I mean, it's a bit like, um, you know, being a scientist or being a physicist or an astronomer. You kind of end up realizing, hopefully, that what you've been looking at all of this time, um, is a journey, and a lot of that journey is about your programming.
Right.
I mean, I'm even happy to stand back and say the rulers that we use in science aren't true rules.
Mm. Hmm.
you know if someone decides that a doubling of something or an inch, this is great, but we have to challenge everything. We have to challenge even the measures, and that's the environment that I was born into as a scientist.
Uh-huh.
For me, it was, it's a very personal journey, your spiritual life. But I was very lucky that I was able to turn my spiritual desires into a career. I mean, I think people who have a lot of passion about what they do are the happiest people of all,
Definitely.
because it's not work.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
So that's a great place to start. So how did you get into this whole thing? So just a
okay,
little
well, I bang my head really hard, is the truth of it.
ah,
I
uh-huh.
kind of trepanned myself.
Okay.
I have a valley that runs all the way down the middle of my head because it's just a kind of a story. I was visiting my uncle in California, who's one of the world's experts in perception. He
Okay.
teaches at University of San Diego. His name's Stuart Anstis. And I dived into the shallow end of his swimming pool by mistake.
Mm.
I followed my sister in, who did a very nice shallow dive, but I did more of a kaplunk. But weirdly, I was taken to hospital and they were explaining that I was going to be, quadriplegic because of this
Oh, wow.
massive head
Hmm.
injury. But just before my accident, and literally that minutes before, my sister had put a chain around my neck with a cross on it. And she said, "This is from Granny," because our grandmother had died. And I was
Mm.
like, okay. So when I actually dived into the swimming pool, this
Oh, wow.
chain fell down onto my chin.
Mm.
And so it kind of snapped, but
Mhm.
it didn't break my neck.
Right. Hmm.
So I kind of had to have my head stapled together, and I was in bed next to a Mexican gangster who had broken knees and a hole in his head from getting bundled in a car back to Tijuana or something, San Diego, no. So I was very keen to get out of that room. But I have to say, after the whole experience, I could see things that I
Hmm.
couldn't really describe. And I also was experiencing things that I couldn't really describe. So I found this fellow in the UK who was working with biofields. His name's Harry Oldfield. And he had a schoolboy colleague called John Catchpole. I mean, schoolboy, we were all kind of young at that stage, me and John. And John and I have carried on ever since. Unfortunately, Harry passed away a little early. But yeah, I mean, we certainly, carrying his light forward. And And so what John effectively developed was an imaging system which I could see,
You could
this
already see.
plume of energy leaking out of the top of my head.
Wow.
And it wasn't right. I mean, it was leaking,
Yeah.
because of this huge crack, that
Wow.
I'd done to my skull. Anyhow, I had treatment. I had an amazing treatment using crystals and PEMF, which is unfortunately no longer available. I quite like to bring it back to life, actually. But yeah, I mean, that's how it all happened. I'd gone to India to a ceremony in South India, a yagna ceremony, which is a very ancient Vedic ceremony. And they build this entire village of huts. And they also make this incredible bird out of geometric tiles. And the chief priest has to do all this chanting for, I think, 21 days, Sanskrit chanting. There are very few priests who are trained to do yagna ceremony.
I've also been to these yagnas in India, so I know.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was in a little room with no windows with a lady called Rosemary Steele taking old-fashioned electrograph images of this chief priest's hands every few hours. And he had the most amazing etheric biofield. But when he was supposed to leave his body during the ceremony, there was no biofield prints.
Oh.
Yeah, totally. So, it was like evidence that this ceremony had its validity, because the whole thing was the priest was supposed to kind of whip up enough dynamics to get on this bird and go off up into other dimensions to commune with the gods. I mean, this is a mega ceremony.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it literally blew my head off that you go to a museum, you see all these halos and auras around all these different people, whether they're Buddhists or Christian, it doesn't matter, just saintly people. And yet, you look at Grey's Anatomy and it's all dead bodies. So I was like, nah, there's something wrong here. I've just seen this chief priest's hands like disappear for 4 days and then come back when he, poof. So, I realized that was where my, scientific interest was. Why is this aspect of human being totally divorced from modern medical science? That to me was interesting. And the other thing is just, wow, this is our light. This is, and I guess, I'm a blessed boy. I got my first paycheck when I was 2. I bought 2 houses when I was 7. I was one of those TV selling cornflakes and Aquafresh, flogging corporate products. And of course, now, I look at these sort of boxes, death boxes that Kellogg's puts out, and I get to speak my truth about cereal. And whereas before my innocence and my light was stolen to sell cornflakes, now I can say, no, I worked for you guys before. You already bought me off. Now I can say how I really feel. I do that quite a lot. I think it's really important for people to eat light. An orange tree is sucking the living daylights out of the sun, and it's protecting its sacred seeds with these balls of light and water and all the things that those seeds need. We're designed to suck the living daylights out of the orange, and pee out the juice eventually. And so this process of transferring light from one fractal to another is the journey of consciousness. And so do I want to just eat McDonald's and crap, and I end up being a human doing? Because it's the light that I ingest that powers my consciousness to be a human being.
That's information. And
yeah, I mean, it's not just food, obviously. I mean, we have congenital chi that comes up through from our ancestors. And so if you're a stroppy git, you're probably going to cut off your own ancestral chi because you're not honoring your ancestors. There's so many fugazis going on with humanity, a kind of.
I like that word.
I blame the corporations, to be honest, because they talk about you know, the love of money is the root of all evil. Well, that's their charter.
Right.
These guys have to make money for their investors, you know, and that to me is like, you know, that really is a personification of what's nasty. And so,
Right.
you know, with all the debt that we've got, I think we should just tax all of the corporations to zero, pay off all the national debts. They're the ones that are running it up anyway.
Right.
And just kind of start again, reset, and have more cooperatives. You know, I'm really excited about organizations like Interflora, where every single florist owned the business. So it's not like these poor pizza guys who get sent stale dough that 3 days late, 3 times more, because some guy is in the Bahamas with his franchise flew profits. I'm talking about real cooperatives where people, you know, we cut out the cream stealers. That's the issue in the world, is there are cream stealers. Everybody generates a pint of milk every day, and yet there are these guys who come along and suck the cream off the top, you know, the corporate cream stealers, I call them. And so I think, you know, I have quite a practical understanding of reality. I mean, some people might think it's quite joyless, but actually I'm full of joy, because, you know, we understand that those beings are all trapped in their own kind of lamp, like a genie. They don't get to enjoy, you know, higher sensory perception. And in fact, they really are canned. And, you know, we can do what we like with cans. We can not open them if we want, you know. You know, we can upcycle them. You know, we can make beautiful temples with clinking cans. You know, we don't have to let, you know, they've declared themselves that there is only one plane and this is it, you know. And so let them rule that plane, and let us as human beings explore all the other realities. And, you know, for example, I used to go and speak at a conference every year called Council Grove in Kansas. And it's actually a kind of a secret conference, because nobody's allowed to record anything. And there are no pre-published speakers. You actually have a blackboard, and you fill in your box, you know, where you know, so it's just instant. It's a pop-up university of consciousness. Anyhow, you know, I think the reasons why in certain years in the sort of 80s, 90s, and early noughties that you know, this conference was so important is because they were talking about things like plant medicine and sacred plant medicine, and the power of fungi and so forth. And now kind of microdosing and all these things seem to be a rigueur, but it was actually really important that there were some people holding the kind of light and doing proper research. So when it suddenly did become a fad, you know, the safe dosing and sort of how to deal with, you know, flip outs and trip outs and all sorts of things. Because, you know, the human mind is a very delicate flower, and it's very easily, it wilts very easily. And so, you know, nurturing our flower is a very important thing. And of course, that's why I say to people who come to me who are not grounded, I can't help you, because whatever I do to you, you can't process, because you need to be grounded to process stuff. It's like you're blocked. You're in the bloody lamp with the other genies. Yeah. The only thing I say to these people is go into nature for a week, barefoot, explore, and then come back, and we can do all this fine tuning and support that you need. So honesty is a really important part of care, and knowing actually what is the right solution. You know, on the other side of the spectrum, I see a lot of people who've done a lot of spiritual work, and I say they're base campers, because there they are, sort of vacillating between whether they're some divine being, which of course we all are, or whether they're just a horrible human doing, and they vacillate between those two things. And instead of having a beautiful white auric field like a saintly old lady does, these guys are all yellow. And the yellow is self-sabotage. It's loitering at base camp, wanting to hang out with empty oxygen bottles rather than taking that leap of faith to your Everest, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And that's something that I witness a lot. And what's ironic is the solution for this, to unpick all of this, we see the yellow in their field, and these people are A grade. These people have got good health, good symmetry, good tensegrity, good biofields, but they're just loitering with intent instead of focusing their intent.
Right.
And so what they're doing is they're mentalizing. I mean, I don't know, is this for children, this thing?
No, not
Well, I
necessarily.
call them, I just say, well, you're a mind fucker in a way to get their attention, because that's what they're doing. They're mind fucking, blah, 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 blah. You know, so many of us do this.
Right.
And there is only one solution. If you understand how the biofield works, what's happening is you're disengaging, you're getting traumatized, you stop breathing. And so by stop breathing, you stop pumping your diaphragm, you stop the splenic chakra spinning, you stop drawing prana in from the atmosphere, and so you really end up canned.
Right.
And so what is the solution for these loiterers who have done so much work, who are already fabulous? The motivation is breath work, because they're holding their breath and they're starving themselves. In fact, they're not taking their fair share of breath, is how I would describe it, because our heart beats, our kidneys do all this, all our organs do their stuff, but we have the ability to consciously change what our lungs are doing.
Right.
You know, we can literally, in 1 second, we can change our breath. We can explore our energy body, which is a toroidal field, and energize it with breath and intention, or we can just ignore it. You know, like most.
You said so many great things. I want to just pause you for a minute and pick apart some of the stuff. So I'm curious, do you still see fields now, or you use them, you know, with the technology that you have? That's the way you're able to see them now? Did that go away?
You know, it's funny because I have had some insights recently in how to explain this, right? So, for example, someone who is clairvoyant is a French word. It just means clear seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so our technology, we call digital clairvoyance. Right. And the useful thing about digital clairvoyance is there's no room for the guy to BS you.
Sure.
There's a lot of wannabe clairvoyants who are going to tell you all kinds of BS. And if you've got no checks and balances, they can get away with it.
Sure.
Whereas if you've got in your pocket the mirror, which shows you exactly what you look like in that moment from a biofield, auric, chakra, meridian perspective, then you can really just monitor the progress of your protocol that your therapist or you yourself are doing. So I think there's an honesty and integrity in it. Now, in answer to your question, what I think is that our technology helps people develop their spiritual faculties and their higher sensory perception, because they're constantly seeing this thing, and it's
triggering feedback.
Often people say to me, why don't you have a printout? And the reason why I don't have a printout is because I honor the fact that when someone looks at their own picture, they actually have their own psychic controls. They don't need change it. They don't need anyone interpreting. They know on a soul level what they're looking at. Boom. And that triggers a cascade of healing. And it triggers, importantly, this process of quantum. Instead of, you know, the hokey cokey and yick it all about, you know, the sort of one leg in and one leg out, you know, or one step forward, two steps back. It's not like that, because with healers, you often have a fantastic experience for a day or two, and then you kind of drift back to your disequilibrium. Whereas if you have a visual tool, which is informing you these stage sets of brightening and improvement in tensegrity and symmetry, you hold that shit.
Right. You keep checking back in with it, making adjustments.
Yeah. So which is totally exact opposite from any other kind of diagnostic technology, You know, what does diagnosis mean? It's Greek. It means two people don't know. Yeah, modern medicine is in a dark age. It has ever since the corporates took over it, and you can see from the COVID era how corrupt and desperately unfair that is, and how medicine doesn't serve the
For
people.
sure.
They've actually cut the healing out of healthcare.
Definitely.
You know, it's extraordinary. And if you meet nurses, go, 20 years ago, they used to let us use H2O2 for wounds. It's the best thing. It's cheap, you know, but they're not allowed to use it now. They're not allowed to use things that actually work.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
then, it's a racket. So, to sort of double back to perhaps your subject of Kundalini, I think what I'm demonstrating here is my Kundalini.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing. Because, if we take a Christian lens on this subject, you have the 7 deadly sins and the 7 heavenly virtues. And if you look up the colors of these aspects, you actually realize it's a parable about the chakras and their functionality. And they're color coded in the same way the chakras are. And so what we realize is that lust, it isn't a sort of base chakra thing, because we can lust for power, we can lust for someone else's partner, we can lust for their car. It's a very powerful sort of aberration of the psychic gift. In the same way that pride actually closes the aperture of the crown chakra, but humility opens it. And so you have this interesting phenomenon where if someone has done all this spiritual work and they've become present, and here they are in heart space, and now they're kind of speaking for divinity, wow, but then they're like, their ego kicks in. They start lusting all their kind of the people around them and the things that they've got. That completely closes the crown chakra.
This is such a huge thing for people, because it's like it seems that humility is like the final stumbling block. And so I love how you relate it to here, because it seems like people want to just have their spiritual awakening. They want to get all this awareness, but they don't want to hit the floor. Like they don't want to go face down. They don't want to face that final place that is the humility space, right?
Well, if you're sitting cross-legged on the earth, you've got nowhere to fall.
Yeah.
Basically.
But that's how it feels to people, to let go of what they think that it should be like, or what they think that they should feel like.
I mean, if it was just that simple, I'd be okay with it. I probably wouldn't even talk about it. But the simple fact is that there are so many people in this world who have done some spiritual development. Then, as I said, lust and pride kick in. And so they end up sucking the living daylights out of everybody else, because that's what we do. We suck light. And ideally, we've cut a deal with the divinity to do something with it.
Right.
That's really where it comes down to it. And that's what I say to people. If they say, like, what's your kind of spiritual 101 cue? I go, cut a deal. Cut a deal with divinity. Make yourself known and say, this is what I am going to do for you.
Right.
Bang. See what happens. It's like doing sacred work anonymously, or donating for the the health camp that's happening in the poor community, or just anonymously. There's nothing like it, because what you're doing is you're short-circuiting your pride and magnifying your humility. And it's so simple. It can be a $1 act, but this process of becoming anonymous is the journey of Kundalini, because you don't value who you are. There's nothing. There's nothing here. If I was something, it could die. I'm not dying. I'm part of this eternal life matrix, which has been going on since time immemorial. Duh. You know, and I change bodies. I choose bodies. In fact, I choose families. You know, I go, oh, those guys look great. I'm going to go and live with them. That's what babies do. That's what souls do. And even in the womb, you know, from that moment where remember that the eggs of a mother were in her grandmother. Because the eggs of a woman are all pre-set before she's even born. So the sacred mother's energy is very profound. And so we have this single cell entity which gets sort of sparked like a sort of Harry Potter wiggle by the man's spark. No cell, you can't call a wiggly thing a cell, like this beautiful female ovum. I got that right. And so from the moment of conception, we've got this 9-month dance where we relive every life we've ever lived. We talk about karma. What does that mean? Okay, lives. We start off as we start off as a bubble on the seashore that gets animated by light and sand and crystals and becomes a cell, you know? And in turn, we then become a cell, and all these, you know, you see the embryo dividing and becoming these multicellular organisms. And then eventually, you know, it starts looking like a tadpole. So we do a frog couple of lives, and then a sort of, or dinosaur, chicken, you know, all these weird lives we've lived. The embryo takes on these different forms. And then at a certain stage, about 100 days in, which is the sacred date that the soul enters the body, we become a human, and we start reliving all our human lives. I mean, you know, we relive a nightmare or a death, and, you know, mum's just getting an elbow in her ribs. You know, and if you see the research, that's how a father and how the connection between the parents and the child in the womb. You know, if you stress a father on one side of the world, his child in his wife's womb responds to it instantaneously. You know, I'm a big fan of that fellow who does Rupert Sheldrake. I've lectured with him a few times. I've plucked fleas off the man, ticks off the man. But you know, he did a study with this African grey parrot, which he had the owner in one room and the African parrot in another building, actually. And so they were showing the woman some random pictures. She had to pick them randomly. And the parrot, a mile away on the campus, was speaking out loud what the woman was seeing in the photographs. Dang. I mean, you can do gold standard research. That's why parapsychology is such an interesting field. So much of it's been done in America at Princeton and Stanford. And yet it's all hush-hush because it's funded by the military. They're kind of playing catch-up with the Russians and their kind of remote viewing and that sort of thing. But the actual pillars of parapsychology are telekinesis, the ability to move objects with our mind, remote viewing, clairvoyance, distant healing, and precognosis, which means that everybody knows what's going to happen. So we study that by flashing images, either sort of bunnies and flowers and children, or war and sort of explosions. And the brain knows that it's going to see a nice image or a nasty image 6 seconds before it happens. And so, you know, once we kind of realize science is a kind of canned fugazi, it's really important to rub the can, let the genie out, and actually just see what happens. Because we've kind of, you know, in 1905, a group of scientists with corporate interests decided that the plasma ether matrix was insignificant, was immeasurable, and therefore, you know, just didn't need to be looked at anymore. So we've had 118 years of, you know, water, ice, and steam, and no plasma taught in schools. And so, you know, it's like, I don't know. I mean, you know, it's time for a bit of a, you know, immersion into self and explore with the guidance that we've got available to us. I mean, I have to say, I used to look things up on the internet, like say a word like catheric, which is a layer of the biofield from an old language. And, you know, I'd have reams and reams of resources 10 years ago
now you can't find anything.
Now you can't find anything. So I think the search engines are all in that can.
Yeah, they're all broken.
They're all in the can. So we have to go search and be our own engine. You know, this is why I like things like human design, biofield imaging, you know, things that really kind of let people see who they are from a different perspective. Now, I'm not into pigeonholing. So, you know, maybe being told you're a projector or a generator or a manifesting generator to me is a bit of a label. But, you know,
if it helps people, I know I don't really like being labeled either.
I mean, it's in the stars. Who we'd argue?
Yeah.
You know, I'm the kind of guy who goes, okay, well, if these guys are putting all these labels, I'm going to go test them because I want to see. I already did a huge study with Ayurvedic doctors where we could actually see from a biofield only perspective whether some was Pitta, Kapha, or Vata.
Oh, cool. That's cool. I'm studying Ayurveda right now. Also.
Right. So
beautiful.
that is totally cool. And so what it means is the biofield is actually the level playing field. And because it's been hidden, we don't have a level playing field.
Right.
But it is the common denominator for all healing modalities. You know, I've studied hundreds and hundreds of modalities in our lab in India. You know, independently, we weren't funded to do it. That's a beautiful thing. You know, it's like we want to have a look at pranic healing and see what it's like. And science should be like that because there's no kind of observer subject kind of nobbling going on. When you nobble the observer, you don't see right.
For sure. Your story is so interesting. I had a similar awakening experience. I got dropped on my head country dancing from 6 feet up on a cement floor and almost broke my neck also, like got within like a hairline. Crazy that I didn't break it, but it opened up all of this information. My life force turned on and I started having internal experiences that I didn't know what was going on. And it led me on a whole journey to India to figure out what was going on in me. And so, yeah, my like origin of why I'm even talking about this comes from a similar thing. Though I didn't go to the scientific method, I went right to the yogic method, and my experiences were all very like internal. I could also see people's like the energy lines in their bodies and so forth. And I went on a little plant medicine journey, which opened up that vision for me even more. And yeah, so I love talking to you about this because it mirrors a lot of my experiences, and it's so cool.
Well, just as well, we're going to do a series. Otherwise, we'd be disappointed if we only got to chat one time.
I know, for sure. I love you just. Yeah.
So well, anyway, what I think we can do with this, for example, is like all the people who are listening, why not let's give them access to their own biofield for a start? So they can journey with us, and then like maybe we'll do that next time. And then the time after, we can actually discuss some of their images, and they can join the Zoom with us. You know, why
that'd
not?
Be great.
Why not? I'm totally open to doing that kind of thing.
Cool. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
But at the same time, you know, why wait? You know, why not right now claim your presence? You know, like you remember I was talking about the surfboard. You know, the surfboard, which is effectively our body. You know, our body is a board surfing a wave we call time.
I use this metaphor too. I love it.
Yeah. And so for our consciousness to be present, we've got to be actually standing on the board and surfing it. Right. And so, you know, as I mentioned, you know, if you're dwelling in the past, you're basically dragging anchors in sand, and you're going to get pulled off your board backwards. But if you're all like in the mind and mentalizing and future and filofax and planning every 5 minutes of every day, and the holiday's already planned in 3 months' time, you're going to fall off your board forwards because you're projecting yourself as tentacles into the future. Whereas if you're just present, you can enjoy this wave. And the thing that's important, it's not a wave that crashes on a beach. This is not that wave. This is the wave that the moon.
I call it the cosmic wave. Is what
it's the one that the moon pulls out. And so you have this amazing wave that goes down the river of consciousness. And we're riding that wave of time down the river of consciousness. That's what we do. Once we do that, we have access to our higher sensory perception. And as you know, my analogy of the board are basically the three components, the three dimensions of space. And the lower three chakras manifest and sustain us as sort of portal lenses for plasma to keep us feeling still. Because if you didn't feel still, you couldn't work, you couldn't do anything. And yet, as you know, this planet is spinning quite fast. So yeah, then, now we know that the lower three chakras address and manifest us in space. And our heart chakra is the spirit clock, which beats our time. Yeah. We then are on the board surfing down the river of consciousness. Yeah. But that ain't it. That just ain't it. That's the starter for 10. That's when you're a fully endowed human being and you get to.
Let's stop at the heart for a minute, because this is where people get dragged really hard. I do a lot of like emotional work with people, and a lot of trauma and old wounds held in the heart. Just that people can't stand on their board because they're just heavy-hearted toward.
They're getting yanked off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but I mean, I think our analogies are modern and relevant, and they may help people feel those tentacles. I mean, one of the things that most people don't use, which is the most important toolkit they have, is ceremony. Because
I agree. I just spoke about this yesterday in my video.
We threw the baby out with the bathwater when we rejected the church or whatever it was. Whereas if we bring ceremony back into our lives, we can cut the cords, the tentacles. We can light a lamp for that individual who's hurting us and damaging us, maybe a family member, and just channel through that candle those unspoken words which you keep getting berated for saying.
Because the ceremony really helps the mind to move away from that and just
it's a bit like gardening. Just make gardening a ceremony, because when I got here, this is a fire damaged place. We just had a really big fire here. I mean, it's one of those funny situations where it's fire damage, but we still have a few trees. I mean, whereas if you look out this window, every single tree pretty much is burnt.
This is gorgeous, though. Beautiful.
Yeah, it is lovely up here. Yeah, I'm in a place called Loveland. I'm very blessed to I mean, this is our research center. I have colleagues here at the moment who are sort of pushing the envelope in our science, and this is a kind of space where you can actually do this kind of work, I think.
Awesome.
It's totally cool. But anyway, I did just want to say one thing, which is that this toolkit, this higher sensory perception, which I've referred to in our discussion 1, is that divinity that even warrants discussing such things as Kundalini, because unless you are here, you ain't there, and so you're not interested. So in that sense, it's quite important to understand this triage between the sacred communication, this now not loitering intent, but now focused intent, and this open, humble crown chakra. So in the sacred law, we speak about the silver thread or the silver cord, but actually it can be a fireman's pipe. You know, this is just divinity that pours into us. And the more humble and the more in service we are, the better we feel. Now, you said the heart. What I say about the heart is, you're right. Heart, we're a sound and light, remember? You know, so the green of heart, and remember, elements are just frozen colors.
Yeah.
Carbon is frozen yellow, for example. And so when we realize these aspects of ourselves, the heart with its beautiful natural green, you know, it is very much our barometer of self-noticing. Because, you know, we've heard of green with envy. You know, that's when the color green gets muddied by, instead of genuinely loving and being joyful for your neighbor's new car and happy for him because you know how crap his old one was, you want it.
You want it.
And so instead of just sending out light, you send out a tentacle. And so you weaken yourself because you've got this stupid tentacle attached to your neighbor's motor car, which, you know, you're never going to get it. It's his. And so you end up with you giving your light away, basically, in a negative way. And so I think it's very important for people to explore their sacred gearbox. Most people are driving around in first gear, you know, wee. And until they understand what is the breath, they're going to stay in first gear.
Right.
You know, and I'm not saying I do breath work. I'm just saying that I cut a deal. And my deal is this, you know, and make your own deal, guys, because I don't know even tell you what is my deal, because it was a stupid deal that I made when I was 21, which is whatever you shower on me, divinity, I'm going to pump it out tenfold. It's like having a tattoo on your shoulder you're a little embarrassed about. You know, that was my deal. You know, I was a numbers guy when I cut it.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful. You can feel it. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be anything more than you're prepared to do. It can be in your own ballpark. I mean, we're in a ballpark. This solar system is a park of balls, you know. So let's enjoy it, you know, let's realize where we are. You know, all this nonsense about government zero emissions and, you know, like the carbon crisis, that's another fugazi. You know, it's an absolute ridiculous thing. If you actually see the times over the millions of years that this planet has actually been livable on, apart from by a few cockroaches and buried creatures, they're just little nipples of time. So to restrict us from warming ourselves when they're just fleeting moments, it just makes you realize why all this crap is going on, because there are clearly some very dark-minded people who like fucking around with us.
Very controlling.
Idiots. Yeah, totally.
But I think that just motivates on a spiritual level us to kind of turn back and take responsibility for our own energy, our own awareness, because so many people have gotten so used to just giving the power away to all these organizations and these, you know, governments and religions and so forth. Tell me what to do, tell me where to go, tell me how much money. And so this just turns the responsibility back to ourselves.
I mean, where it starts for me is, as I said, the breath and smashing that smart meter that they've cajoled into your house. You know, all these Wi-Fi broadcasts. And the best gift you can ever give anyone is an analog timer. It costs $2. You plug it in the wall where their Wi-Fi is, and then the family has a powwow. When should we turn the internet off? Well, we're all in bed by 11, so let's make it 10:30 or 11 or 10 past 11. But just for the sacred hours of sleep,
to turn it off.
It's silence, real silence. I think it's so important. Once you claim back your sleep, then you claim back you're no longer mad, basically. Most people are absolutely mad, or they're certainly behaving madly.
Because they're not getting into their deep rest and rejuvenating. Yeah.
Yeah, they're getting disturbed by this click, 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 click. I mean, they're weapons. People use these types of things as weapons.
Right.
Ironically, remember sound and light, the two that make the waft and weave of our reality. And so we get the opportunity to use those two tools directly, sound and light. So when you say, oh, or even amen, there's the same sounds. What you're doing is you're giving yourself a cellular massage, a sort of actually an atomic massage, because you're resonating and vibrating every single atom in your body. And you know, it's
one of my favorite exercises is the Brahmi, where you just close your ears and hum.
Yeah. Well,
So
I mean, some people hum like that in the bath, you know, underwater, you know, just with their nose sticking, and they get these kind of resonances. And I know a lot of people who do self-care like that without realizing what they're actually doing. And so I think it is sensible for people just to bring ceremony into their lives and ritual, because they get to choose.
And it can be simple, like you said, like a light candle.
Yeah. And I think that's the message today is breathe, bring ceremony into your life, reclaim your house first as a home and then as a sanctuary. Because if your children walk in their plastic clothes and their plastic shoes, they're basically wearing a condom, you know, Nike. And so if we take our shoes off and are bare feet in our house, we're all actually on the same level. You know, parents wonder why they're so exasperated, why their children aren't listening. It's because they're sitting in a condom over there. So it's really crucial for us to understand, you know, what are these modern barriers between each other and how to lower them in the family and in ceremony and in workspace. You know, we really don't need all this baggage. You know, I guided a PhD student who was studying the effects of Kadi on the biofield. And even in the Jewish tradition, there's writings about the frequencies of linen and wool and why we shouldn't be wearing certain fabrics together, and silk, which cuts off our energy almost completely, like polyester does. And so who wears silk again? Oh yeah, all those idiots. Yeah. You know, I mean, you know, it's just the more we're humble and the more we work with nature and natural fibers and simple foods, the more we're in the zone. You know, we're actually sitting there in the bullseye. And so, you know, some people have Kundalini experiences which are very traumatic. That's because they're not sitting in the center of their own target when they start their journey. And so they vacillate, and it's like a healing crisis. It actually makes you feel seasick. It's like eating an avocado from another country. You get seasick, you get car sick, you get jet lag, because every cell of that avocado is spinning as per that zone on the planet, and you've just flown it over the other side for your own benefit. And now you're eating scrambled eggs and you don't even realize it. You know, we really need to question everything that we do and look at it in a fresh way. And for example,
and just get really present with our life.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, don't cut your passion and your work and your nourishment and feeding your family and all these things, but just don't buy anything.
I appreciate having you on so much. I want to just tell all of our viewers, you know, thank you for being here. Maybe walk around your house right now and re-sanctify it just with your awareness. Light a candle, call it sacred, take your shoes off, turn off your Wi-Fi at night, and we'll be back here again to talk soon. Dr. Streeter, it's been an honor to have you.
Not at all. Well, I look forward to seeing you again in the flesh, and I'm excited to hear that we both had a similar nut-cracking experience.
Yeah, yeah, fascinating. Okay, well, obviously we have more to talk about it, so we'll come back again soon. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Thank you.
God bless you, girl.
Thank you so much.
Bye.